Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of HSP TV. I am your host, Barbara, and today I am joined by the wonderful Caroline Ferguson. And our topic today is going to be walking on the wild side of sensitivity. And I've been looking forward to this talk because most of us see being sensitive as something undesirable, something challenging, something you want to get rid of, something not to be proud of. And I get it. I used to be there and used to have these thoughts. But part of my why, part of my motivation for all of these talks and everything I do is to show people that it's actually just really awesome to be who you are. And that's why I love that you're here today, Caroline, to talk about this because people need to also get familiar with another side of the sensitivity.
They do indeed. And I completely agree. By the way, thank you so much for having me on. I'm absolutely delighted. We met through the topic of sensitivity, and I think
Yes.
that I'm always really happy to be in a room with other highly sensitive people because there's just an energy and an acceptance and a love between us all that is just really life affirming and is such a pleasure and fills
Yeah.
me up. It fills up my energy banks. Um, but I completely agree with you that there so many people do struggle with their sensitivity, um, and others of us, we when we find out that there is this thing, this whole idea of sensitivity is a real thing. I think that it's such a relief, and we embrace it, and we grab hold of it because, as you said, for so much of life is we feel other, we feel different, we feel unusual, we feel odd. Um, and think there's something wrong with us, perhaps, and to find out that actually there's nothing wrong with us. And we're one of the 20% of humans that has these extra gifts, which do come with extra challenges, but we have these amazing gifts. When you find that out, that you're not odd, you're not other, you're not unusual in a bad way, you're
Yes.
just sensitive, and that's a normal human characteristic that is very
Yes.
much needed in the world. And the more we can accept that part of us, the happier and the healthier we can be.
Exactly. I agree with that 100%. And it is because, well, one in five people is highly sensitive. So what that actually means is that four out of the five people that you meet are not like you. They don't talk like you. They don't act like you. They don't have the same morals, the same values, the same ideas. So when you are not aware of who you are and you
Mhm.
measure yourself to the other four people,
Mm,
then you find that you are very different and that you don't fit in that well. And because the other four people seem to be on the same page and act and do and think in the same way, that often leads to us feeling that there's something wrong with us.
mm,
That we are broken, that we need to be fixed. I seriously thought there was something wrong with me when I was younger because nobody seemed to relate to me. And I also had difficulty relating to other people.
mhm,
And this is a very normal thing for sensitive people to go through because four out of five people are just not like us.
mhm,
And when you then don't know that it's just you're a different type of person, you are a highly sensitive person and not a four out of five other type of person,
mhm,
then you quickly want to sort of try and morph yourself into being more like the other four
mhm,
so that you think you can fit in or that you might have friends. And in doing that, in trying that, that brings on a whole other range of issues that often are also not positive, further sort of confirming that you're weird, that you're strange, and that there's something wrong with you.
mm. It's true. I went through a lot of that when I was younger, but there was an additional complication. I wasn't aware I was sensitive, but there was an additional element of complexity in the mix, which meant that when I tried to be like other people, particularly when it was all about going out and having fun, which is when you're younger, that your whole social
Yeah.
identity revolves around going out and having fun, and doing the fun things. I was always trying to be the funnest, so
Yes.
I was trying to be the one that that jumped off a higher rock, or
The life
you
of the
know,
party.
or ran backwards faster, or rode my bike in more, you know, interesting, dangerous ways, or climbed trees or whatever. So I
Mm,
almost found that I was trying to push myself beyond what other people were. And then
mm,
I would pay for that. I would pay
yeah.
for that by becoming hopelessly overstimulated and overwhelmed, which is, you know, the world thinks that's what the world thinks of sensitivity. They think of snowflake. They think, oh, this person is too sensitive for life. Um, and I would have those moments when I'd overextended myself, and I didn't actually discover that I was highly sensitive. Well, I knew I was highly sensitive, but I didn't realize it was a thing, that there was actually a categorization in terms of
Mhm.
the trait until I was 50. It took that long before I found out about Elaine Aron and her book and the research that she'd done and the 1 in 5. And when I did find out, it was such a homecoming for me. It was, of course, oh, of
Yes.
course. But when I was reading the book, and I actually found out when I was training to be a psychotherapist, and two of my tutors at the time, independently on different days, made a comment. One of them, the comment was, Caroline is a textbook example of an HSP. I was
Mhm.
thinking, what does that even mean? And
Yeah.
then another one, she'd said, while she was teaching, she sort of just said in a very offhand way, of course, I'm a highly sensitive person, so blah, blah, blah. And my little inner monkey went, oh, of course, I'm a highly sensitive person, get you, you know, um, because I just didn't understand it. And I was so amazed that she'd just come out with it in front of the whole group of people, you know. And it was only when the second tutor said Caroline's a textbook example that I thought, okay, this is twice now. I need to pay attention. This is, you know, I'm being poked here to find out more. And that's when I went and asked, and somebody gave me the book. And then it was just like, oh my goodness. Um,
Yeah.
and for me, it was such a relief, because it was like, one of the things was I cry a lot, you know, and I
Mhm.
used to
Me too.
cry when people were nice to me, when people were horrible to me. If I was moved by anything, I had like no
Yeah.
control over my tear
Yeah. Me
ducts at
too.
all. And the interesting thing was, when I found out about being HSP, I realized that's not a, you know, that's not a handicap. Being moved, being easily emotionally moved, and having my emotions deep and close to the surface, that's not a handicap. That's just who I am. And when I stopped trying not to cry, I stopped crying.
Hmm.
I stopped needing to cry. I mean, I still cry. I still, you know, an advert comes on and I'll cry. But
Yeah.
I'm no longer constantly trying to push away the tears, and I'm not ashamed. And when I stopped being ashamed and I stopped pushing it away, it stopped needing to happen.
Yes, because I think it comes from a sort of an inner struggle, and then we just overflow. It's interesting because of what I gathered from what you shared is very similar to me, that we sort of discover who we really are by accident.
Yes,
Because
we
someone's,
do.
for me, it was, I was talking to my boss at that time, and he said, "Yeah, but you are an HSP because my wife is an HSP, and you're exactly the same, so you must be one." And then he went on with the rest of his talk, and I was thinking, should I feel insulted?
Yeah.
Just call me a name.
Rewind, rewind.
I had no clue what he was talking about, but I just the term stuck with me, and then I started Googling it, and then I thought, oh, this is interesting. And then I found fora of other highly sensitive people talking with each other about life.
Yes,
I thought, oh my God, I either completely understood where they were coming from, or I had similar experiences, and
yes,
that led me indeed to Elaine Aron and to her book. And when I started reading about high sensitivity and everything that it was, I felt like, oh my God, this is me. Like I
yeah,
came home to myself.
yeah,
Like I
absolutely.
finally had permission to be me, the whole me. And
Mm,
before that time, I indeed was struggling with the being me part. Now I
mm,
was trying to not show emotion and to be more like everybody else. And in doing so, became much more sensitive to everything and much more easily triggered because I was denying who I really am.
yeah, it's true. It's true. I wrote an article a while back about uh, the fact that, people just throw out there, just be yourself. And it's such an unhelpful piece of advice because, in your head, there's this, who the hell is that? I don't even know who that is. Who is myself? I have no idea. And so
Exactly.
just be yourself, just show up as yourself when you've been wearing a mask all your life is I absolutely don't know who that is.
How do I
And
do that?
yeah, and finding out that I was highly sensitive and that it's a normal and it's a valuable trait and it needs to be managed was like a huge chunk of identity just went chunk and fitted right in. And I started to build this picture of who I am. And part of who I am is a sensitive upstart. That's part of my identity now. And I live it and I breathe it and I own it. And it feels like a great fit. And I didn't have that before. I never had that great fit with who I am. So it was a really key part of being able to understand this, be yourself and
Yes.
show up as yourself and who that is. And it's great. And I'm still exploring and I love it. And there's
Hmm.
no judgment and there's no shame anymore. Whereas,
No.
like you, for so long, it was, am I broken? Am I substandard? Was I built on a Friday afternoon by fairies that wanted to go to the pub out of spare parts?
Yeah.
You know, I don't fit in. I'm not like them. And then you find the other people who don't fit in. You
Yes.
find your tribe, and it's like a big exhale. It's just like,
Yes.
I'm safe here. I'm safe here. These
Yeah.
are my people. And I met Barbara Allen, who ran the Centre for High Sensitivity in the UK. And, that was another really key moment for me, is
Hmm.
connecting with a community of people who knew and valued, who know this and value it deeply. And it's great. It's great to spend time with other people.
For sure, that is one of the biggest reasons behind the community that I've
Mm,
created, but also the work that I do, these talks. Because
sure.
as soon as you discover the people that are like you, then you don't have to explain and you don't have to try to fit in. You can just say, "Oh, this happened today," and then they know exactly the impact of that, the thoughts and the feelings involved in that,
Yes.
the desperation maybe, or the confusion, or whatever is going on, just by sharing a couple of simple words. It's
Mm.
so wonderful to be in the vicinity of people who just get it.
Yes, absolutely. And that is it. They get it. We all get it. Um, and it was, we both mentioned it is like a homecoming. For
Yeah.
those of us who are able to accept it, and I know that there are lots of people who can't accept it and who
Yeah.
struggle, particularly men, I find,
Hmm.
because they're not allowed to be sensitive. This world doesn't,
Yes.
certainly in the West, our cultures don't allow
Yeah.
men, or didn't allow men to be sensitive. But I do think that is changing, and I do think there's more value being placed now
It's
on,
definitely
you know,
changing, and
the
I'm
soft
always
skills.
very happy because I work a lot with men. People think, "Oh, you work with women." No, I work with men and women, and so
Mm,
there for me, there's no difference. And I'm actually very happy when men reach out and want to
mm,
work with me, because as women, when we are crying, then it's like, "Oh, it's probably that time of the month." It's also not something that makes us very happy, but at least it's sort of somewhat accepted. But
mm.
when a man starts crying in the middle of the work floor, it's like, oh my God, what are you doing? Stop it. Men don't do this. Yeah, there are all of these judgments around it.
Oh,
And what
absolutely.
I'm often hearing is this, that sensitive men usually have female friends, not male
Mm,
friends, because most males, the alpha men, or so sensitive men are sigma males, but the alpha male is the one that is soccer, beer, boobs, and
yeah.
wants to talk about things like that. And the sensitive man just doesn't really find any purchase with that. But
Mm,
for me at least, I'm hoping to find out how it was for you. But I also didn't find purchase with womanly women.
mm.
I was never one that had the long, still not the long nails that you
No.
right? Or the massive amounts of makeup, or the
No.
fake boobs,
Yeah.
or even knowing how to accessorize with a belt and a necklace. I've learned now from someone who took the time to sort of
Yeah.
teach me, but I was always more a tomboy.
Yeah, same here. Same here. I climb trees.
Yes, higher
Because
than most of my male
yeah,
friends.
yeah, yeah. No, I absolutely get it. But I think also for men, there's so much masking that goes on, even
Yes,
amongst the so-called alphas. And there are now men out there who are influencers who are showing people that it is okay to be kind, that it's okay to be interested in the humane qualities of others. And we need that so badly.
yes,
We really need that, and it's taken a certain amount of bravery, I think, for those men to show up as who they are.
for
um,
sure.
that
Yeah.
things are changing, things are definitely changing.
Yes, for all of us, and I'm very happy with that. And so the planet or society also shifts in a wave pattern.
Mm,
So the hippie time, I always said I was much better at ease or in my place when I had lived in the flower power in the hippie time, because that was all about love and
yeah.
feelings, and it's a time that has always drawn me very much because
Uh-huh.
you were allowed to be sensitive in that period. And that really illustrates how we sort of, as a wave, move through time. And
Yes.
after that, then there was sort of the counter reaction where we went completely into the mind space,
Hmm.
in logical thinking, goal setting, very much
Yes.
the masculine energy of
Yes.
doing things. And now we are waving back
Yes.
from the back wave towards the more feminine energy where it's okay to cry about things or to share how you really think or feel about certain things, and where it's okay to be queer or to have pronouns like they, them, or
Mm,
to dress in pink and have multicolored hair if you're a
mm,
guy or a girl, it doesn't really matter. Where
mm,
being weird and unique is no longer judged,
mhm,
but just part of society. It's where
mhm,
we're moving towards. It's not completely there, but
mhm.
it's a lot more there than
It is
20
a
years
lot more
ago.
there, and I think that there's a lot more embracing of, your very timely in the topic of your podcast, this showing up, this being yourself. There's a lot more acceptance of that, as you say, this of individuality, but it's also very tribal. It's
Yes.
very tribal. We are looking for our people, and a lot more people are able to find their people now, because the internet enables that. So
Yes.
on the whole, I'm not sure the internet's a good thing, but I do think that it's been great for connecting us with those
Yes.
of our, with our family, with our
Yes.
natural family.
And my
Yeah.
community is an international community with people from all over the world. And
Mm.
it delighted and fascinated me to be able to connect with highly sensitive people from all over the world, parts of Europe, United States, Canada, United Kingdom, but also
Yeah,
Australia, New Zealand,
sure.
Thailand. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
And to
Yeah,
then discover that our themes are universal.
they are.
It
They
doesn't
so
matter
much
if
are.
I'm born in Thailand or the United States or the Netherlands or the United Kingdom.
Yeah,
We are all struggling with roughly the same things and roughly the same patterns.
we are. We are, and I think that it does us good sometimes to zoom out, because there is a tendency. And I think that HSPs have this tendency, perhaps a little more than others, to zoom in so close that we can't see past the end of our nose. We become so consumed by the experience, by the intensity of the experience that as an HSP we go through, because we are observing on a micro level all the time and processing that at great depth, so
Yeah.
that it becomes easy to live in a kind of glass bowl. But actually sometimes I think it does us a lot of good to zoom right out, right out. And I'm constantly telling people about pale blue dot. Have you heard of pale blue dot?
No.
So pale blue dot is a photograph that was taken by Voyager 1. And Voyager 1 was one of the first space exploration crafts, and it was only intended to, have a lifespan of, I don't know, 20 years or something like that. And this
Yeah.
little tiny thing is still out there, beeping away on its little journey. And as it approached the edge of our solar system, the team that were at NASA that were controlling this little thing, and the computer on it is so primitive, it's about 250 megabytes.
Mm-hmm.
And they have to, it's got a tape inside, it's got a tape. So when they want to reprogram it, they have to send instructions for it to, reverse on the tape. And it's incredible. But it was taking pictures. And at the last minute, as it was approaching the edge of our solar system, Carl Sagan was one of the people that, scientist and philosopher and poet. He was one of the people that was on the team that was handling, and he and another person were in charge of the photography. And they said, can we just turn her around? Voyager 1, turn her around to look back towards the Earth. And they said, no, because it will burn out the camera, because that means back towards the sun. And, it was a camera from 30, 40 years ago.
Yeah.
But in the end, they did it. They turned the camera around and they pointed it towards Earth. And basically, Earth in this shot, you'll have to go and look it up. It's called pale blue dot. Earth is something like 2 pixels.
Mm-hmm.
And it's in a sunbeam. And Carl Sagan wrote this piece called Pale Blue Dot, and there's a really beautiful animation which you can find out there if you search for it.
Yeah.
And he wrote this piece which basically says that pale blue dot, everything that we've ever loved, everyone who has ever lived, everyone who has ever been anybody on this world lived on that pale blue dot. We are basically, that's all we are. That's all we have. And he refers to Earth as a mote of dust hanging in a sunbeam.
Yes.
And so that's what I come back to over and over again when you're hearing about Gaza and you're hearing about Ukraine and you're hearing about all of the other atrocious things that are going on in the name of land grabbing and money and domination. I think it's so pointless, because we are a mote of dust hanging in a sunbeam. We're all we have. We have to look after each other. We have to look after our home. We are driving ourselves to extinction. And it's just so pointless. It's so pointless. So that's what I try and do as much as possible, is when it all starts closing in, I think, right, let's zoom out and just appreciate that mote of dust hanging in a sunbeam.
I love that you're sharing that, because that reminded me of something. I was very close to my uncle. He is also, he died this last Christmas, but also a highly sensitive person. And he's one of the only people that really understood me. And we talked about this because I used to sort of drown in my life, because I kept adding stuff together, and then the massiveness of it, and the massiveness of the emotions, and the massiveness of the energy of it, it consumed me and it became too much. And then I just was either on the verge of a burnout, or I was having feelings like I'm not sure if I want to keep on living.
Yeah,
And he said it's because you could keep stacking everything on top of
yeah,
each other. If you
yeah,
can zoom out and see the bigger picture and just see, oh, but that has nothing to do with that, and they're just individual things that are
yeah,
all in your orbit, but with lots of space in between,
yeah,
they become tiny individual things in your orbit instead
yeah,
of this massive jumble of things that
yeah,
overwhelm you. And I am still very grateful that he showed me this, because it made the difference in
yes,
how I experienced my life, and especially in the overwhelm my life was
yes,
causing.
yes. And it reminds us that we have choices. It's like, I've got to do this, I've got to do this, got to do this, got to do this. And in my work as a psychotherapist and a mindset trainer, the most toxic beliefs that we have, the most toxic beliefs are the must-based beliefs. The must, got to, have to, should, ought to, need to, and sometimes that's just language. Sometimes it's just, oh, I've got to go shopping. That's not an imperative. That's not a must. We know when we're doing the must, because where there is a big must, there's an or else.
Yeah.
I have to keep all these balls in the air, or else. I mustn't let somebody down, or else. I have to do this perfectly, or else. And the or
Yes.
else's are really bad. The or else's are, or else it's terrible, or else it's the end of the world, or else I can't handle it,
Yes.
or else I'm a bad person,
Yes.
or else you're a bad person, or else the world is a dangerous place. And so, that's really what I teach people to do, is to ask themselves the world's most important question. when we are disturbed, when we're feeling emotionally out of equilibrium, when we're feeling overwhelmed, whenever we're feeling, south of a balanced state, the question is, what's the story I'm telling myself that is leading me to feel like this?
Yeah.
And we might think, oh, it's because I'm trying to sell the house, or it's because my father's ill, it's because I've become a carer suddenly, it's because of this, it's become, no, that's factored in, of course, that has an impact, but it's the story I am telling myself about each of those things. This
Yeah.
can't be happening, this is awful. It's those stories that pin in place my anxiety or my overwhelm or my not good enough or whatever it is, that is the bad feeling of that day.
Yes.
It's the stories that pin it in place. And we have a choice. So I always talk about self-awareness being the most important life skill, because 20 to 70,000 thoughts a day, if we can't hear those, we don't know what we're doing to ourselves. We can't fix it. So that's really what I teach people to do, is to build that self-awareness, to be able to tune in and challenge and change the story.
Yeah.
But we have to be able to tune it and hear, what is the story I'm telling myself that is leading me to feel overwhelmed, that's leading me to feel guilty, that's leading me to feel ashamed, that's leading me to feel furious, that's leading me to feel anxious, So there are all sorts of amazing tools that are available to us. And when we start using them and building self-awareness and get to know ourselves in depth, all those other pieces of the puzzle start fitting in, and we become a whole person who is entitled to make choices, who's entitled to make decisions about all of that stuff we do to ourselves. All of those pieces that you were talking about that lead us to become so overwhelmed because we can't see through the mess. It just feels like a huge sense of obligation. Everything is just a huge sense of responsibility. But when we start picking it apart, as your uncle showed you how to do, we can see, oh, it's that piece and it's that piece, and I've got that story and that story. And actually, I can just zap, get rid of that one. That's gone. Don't need that one. Not essential in my life. And that's how we find our way out of the overwhelm. Zooming out, being able to see things for what they are and understanding the stories that we're telling ourselves about them, and then giving ourselves permission to make those choices, to make those decisions, and say, no, that's not a priority for me. That's going down there, or that one can go, or I'm going to choose this one here. It's just the most valuable
that's
life
beautiful.
lesson.
Yes, it ties in really with another technique that I learned, and this I think is step one. And the technique that I learned is then, what do I believe about this? What do I believe about the stories that I'm telling myself?
Yeah.
Oh, do I believe that this is true, or do I believe that this is not true? Do I believe that this is possible? Do I believe that this is
Yeah.
not possible? And why? Why do I believe this? So when we become aware of these patterns within ourselves, and these thought patterns, these belief patterns, these action patterns, that is when we tap into the power of being able to change it, which then
Absolutely.
changes the end result in our reality.
Yeah. Awareness, acceptance are, the first steps to being able to stop and say, okay, I actually understand what's going on, and I have the ability to decide what I do about it.
Yes.
It's incredibly valuable. But only 15% of us, if that, actually are naturally self-aware. And I wasn't one of them. I would have sworn blind I was really self-aware, but I wasn't. I was
No.
self-conscious. And it's a different thing.
Yes.
Only about 15%. There's a woman called Tasha Eurich, if anyone is interested, who's done fantastic research around self-awareness, and she's got a brilliant book called Insight. But it is the number one life skill. And to bring us back to sensitivity, that building of self-awareness when I was training to be a therapist, and the work that I've done on that since, I'm not naturally self-aware, but I am living proof that you can build it. You can learn to be self-aware.
Yes.
And that
As
self-awareness
am I.
has hugely helped me to be able to manage my sensitivity, and also manage the other bit, the wild side that is about the title of this talk. Because earlier on, I alluded to the fact that there was an additional complication in my sensitivity, which took me a while to learn. Because when I was reading Dr. Elaine Aron's book, The Highly Sensitive Person, I was nodding a lot. I was going, yes, yes, yes.
Yes.
But there was a lot in it, quite a lot, that I was going, that's not really me. I scored very highly. I think I scored 23 out of 25 or something like that on the sensitivity scale. But I was thinking, and the bits that weren't really me was caution. Highly developed levels of caution is a natural part of high sensitivity. And I was thinking, I've made some big decisions on impulse, and and they were talking about this risk aversion. I'm not risk averse. My first set of wheels was a motorbike, and I got a big one as soon as I could.
Exactly, but that probably means that you are an HSS, and high sensation
That's
seeker. So
right. That is exactly it. And it was finally, I got to a page where it said, if you're like this, then chances are you're one of the 30%, and nearly a third of HSPs is a high sensation seeker.
yeah,
And it was like, yes, that's it. Final piece of the puzzle. Final piece of the puzzle.
yeah,
So if anybody is listening to this and hasn't done the self-tests yet to find out, if that's you, then I really advise you can go on to, I think Elaine Aron's website is hsperson.com.
yeah.
And if you go on there or just Google sense of HSP self-test, they're free tests. They only take a couple of minutes to do. And it's really valuable information to understand I am HSS plus HSP.
Yes, and not to put yourself in a box. Also not to label yourself, because I'm not a fan of boxes and labels.
Yeah, yeah,
But when you discover these types of things about yourself, it gives you like an insight into why you are the way you are. And that then gives you a sort of like an entry into really getting to know the ins and outs of who you are,
yeah,
with the intent of better understanding yourself and better
yes.
being able to relate to the world around you, which makes life just more fun and more effortless.
It does. And it helps you with recovery, because there is no doubt. I talk about this bucket. So I think every human has this bucket of what they can tolerate in a day, what they can handle in terms of effort and conflict and emotion and just living,
Yeah.
and everything that we do, every decision we make, every conversation we have, every action we take, every action we don't take, every feeling we have adds to the level in our bucket.
Yes.
And you get to a point where if your bucket gets too full, you don't have the resources to manage yourself, and if the bucket overflows, HSPs, sensitive people well when they're overwhelmed. I certainly don't. I get very snappish and tearful and angry. And when we get to know ourselves and we get to be able to work out what the level in our bucket is, so we think, okay, I'm feeling stressed and I'm feeling pushed and I'm feeling a bit annoyed because actually a lot has happened today. That's when we can ask ourselves, what do I need? What I need to do is reduce the level of stress in my bucket. And I
Yes.
do that by going for a walk for 15 minutes, or I do that by having a
Yeah.
nap, or I do that by having a glass of water. I do that by closing the door. So we get to learn who we are and what we need to manage ourselves and to manage our sensitivity and to manage the intensity with which we experience life. And it's just so brilliant to be able to recognize, to have the skills to recognize, okay, I know what I need now, and to teach those skills to children as well. So you're
Yes.
absolutely right. It's not about putting yourself in a box. It's about giving yourself information that helps you get a fuller picture of the amazing, rich human being that you are.
Yes. That is it. Oh, I've been loving our talk, Caroline, and I think this is going to be really valuable to, especially if you're still in the I don't really know who I am and still discovering who you are phase of your journey. So if that is you, we would love to hear from you. Tell us your experiences in the comments, or if you have an insight or a question, we would love to hear from you. I can also imagine that you would love to find out how you could contact one of us if you feel attracted to our energy and you want to explore or talk or whatever. So where could people find you, Carolyn?
Mostly they can find me on Substack. And Substack is a newsletter platform that's kind of like having your own media channel. And I'm on Substack as Caroline Ferguson. And also, if you Google Something More, that is the title of my newsletter on Substack. And Something More is basically about there's something more that we all know, that we have it in us to be or to do in our lives that make a difference to the world and to us, and ramp up our levels of life satisfaction. So it's all about something more. So Substack is the best place to find me. I'm also on LinkedIn.
I love it. I will make sure that all of the links that Caroline just mentioned are included in the show notes, probably below this video or maybe to the side, kind of depends on where you're catching this. But both her links as well as my links will be in the show notes. So please don't hesitate to reach out. You don't have to be alone if you don't want to. You don't have to go through everything alone if you don't want to. And we would love to talk with you.
Definitely,
Right?
definitely.
Yes. So for today, just thank you for this wonderful conversation, Caroline. I've really loved it. And for you, of course, listener and watcher out there, thank you for always tuning in, for being a member of this channel, for supporting my cause. And I look forward to inspiring everybody with another beautiful guest next week. And for today, I wish all of us to have a really beautiful rest of our day.
Oh, what a lovely ending. Thank you so much for having me on.
You as well. Bye, everybody.
Bye.